להתחיל.
Good morning, Professor David Psiג.
Hi, Shlomo. How are you?
Fine, fine. Thank you. I have really the honor and the pleasure to introduce you today as a promo to our SGLA program. But as you remember, we have began to vision this program around 10 years ago. And the formats are changing, but as I see, the high purpose of the whole thing is still, let's say, the firekeeper. We have a friend who is firekeeper, so the fire is still there, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I will have the honor to introduce you. I will make it as short as possible, but it can never be short. So I will say some words on David Psiג. David Psiג is a futurist, lecturer, consultant, and best-selling author who specializes in technology, technological, social, and educational futures. Professor Psiג is associate professor at Bar-Ilan University, Ramat Gan, where he teaches the Graduate School of Education. His courses include system theories, future methodologies, and technological, social, and educational futures. He heads BIU's graduates program in communication technologies, as well as BIU virtual reality laboratory. Wow, it's really long. First, Psiג has consulted for many corporations, as well as public and private sectors institutes. He is chair in one of his own Future Code Ltd, which develops and employs toolkits of computerizing future methods in decision-making processes. He has consulted in Israel, Asia, Europe, and North America. He has served as a chief advisor to the Commissioner for Future Generations in the Israeli Knesset, which I have to admit that it was me. Among his many activities, he is a member of the Israeli National Council for R&D. I will say a few words on his books, but he is a bestseller books at the Future Code and 2048. Each has received the Israeli coveted Gold Book Award. His most recent book, For Cognito, and I can tell you that there are another two on the line, were published in January 2013, and he is top of the Israeli bestseller list. Let's stop here, because otherwise we'll waste the whole hour talking on your titles. But I have to say that, first of all, I see you as a really, really good friend and a consultant, which actually I think sometimes when I was commissioner, I was consulting you and you was the commissioner. So we're doing it together.
Come on.
But at the end of the day, I think we've done great work. I still remember when we were talking about the future of the Commission for Future Generations, which unfortunately in the Israeli parliament, when we were talking there, the future was not so, the end was not so nice. But now we have all over the world commissioners for future generations. And this seed that we were putting together in the ground, in the earth, is now developing and developing. And also SGLA is really developing. And thank God for Corona happy times that now we are really global and we have many students from all over the world. And we have also lecturers from all over the world. We have with us Greg Braddon and Princess Laurentine and others professors. So I'm very, very happy to welcome you. And I will first ask you some questions, if it's okay for you, just to open the conversation. So we are talking on this time on some kind of, if I may say, we see the system are collapsing. And the question is, what is the future of leadership? Who will be the leaders? how it's going to look like, and if you can say some words on the future of also COVID-19, but please do me a favor, don't frighten us too much.
All right. So let's start with some prospects of this pandemic. Actually, this is probably the crisis that is going to shape decades ahead a lot of institutions, a lot of leadership paradigms. Everything is going to be shaped from this crisis. We are still at its very initial stage, which is very important to put it in mind. A lot of people think that's it. A month from now, we're going to see, a shot that will, finish this crisis. But it's probably going to take about 3 to 5 years, with ups and downs all over the world with this pandemic. And one thing it is already clear at this point: all those crises are a present to systems. For any system, a crisis is something that, if we are to really understand how we can really come out of it with other kinds of thoughts, of ideas, that's the best thing that might happen to any person in any kind of a crisis. So we are at the verge to probably understand a very differently how we need to lead ourselves towards the 21st century. And if I might summarize it in one word, I might say that what we've called globalization is probably going to go through a very difficult time. The paradigm of globalization is going to be hit in its very foundations. And the reason is because globalization as a paradigm of sharing and of leading was developed after World War I, and then took another step after the Second World War. But the paradigm of globalization is based on voluntarily kind of relationships and leadership. Okay, it means that people understood how important it is to share and to bring together a lot of forces and a lot of perspectives in order to double the force or the infrastructures or whatever into gaining a lot of strength. But those relationships were based on a kind of voluntarily kind of relationships, which means, take for example the World Health Organization. It was based on just partnership, that as far that it was something that gained or gave a nation some kind of new ideas. That was people were part of that institute. But when some nations decided that it's not of their interest to be part of that institute, they just retreated. So that the idea of globalization was a voluntarily kind of relationship, where we are going through another phase of globalization, and we need different kinds of leaders to lead that new paradigm. At this point, we tend to define the new paradigm that is emerging with the word or with the term that is being taken from physics, from quantum physics, which is called being entrenched together, or something like a very different kind of relationship between particles. For example, we know that in quantum physics there is a phenomena that is already being studied, that they found that two particles or one particle always have another particle somewhere in the universe, and whenever you do something on one particle, that other particle is reacting as if you're working on it, or if you are having an impact on it. That term or that phenomena is called entanglement in quantum physics. And probably humanity is evolving to understand how we are entangled together. And we will need new leaders to devise new institutes that bring that paradigm into action. For example, we need, to develop and establish world institutes that are not based just upon voluntarily kind of relations, but something that will make it clear that we are so entangled that we need to take action. And that entanglement is probably one of the best thing that might emerge from this crisis. So this is just in a nutshell. A lot of people are already speaking about it, and but we don't have still the kind of leadership that will be able to bring that paradigm in with very specific ideas how to form new institutes and how to lead other people, so that they will really understand, not just understand mentally, but understand, if you wish, physically, how we are really connected with each other, and how we can bring that connection into elevating humankind.
If I may say, just for our egos, when we were writing the concept of SGLA, one of the things that we were writing was a resonant leadership, which is in a way some kind of entanglement. It is that resonant leadership is not, it goes beyond the leader and the follower. It is some kind of a resonance, let's say inspirational resonance or something that we create. But when I'm looking at your eyes now and you are a bit far away, still there is some kind of a resonance between us that is beyond the understanding of, and the physics knows about it. So how we will put it in a form that will really, people will act upon it, I don't know to say it, but I think the idea is already there.
The idea is there. The problem is that we need the leadership with some very specific ideas to implement that paradigm into a world stage, into corporations, into social life, into everything. Because globalization, as amazing as it is for humanity in the 20th century, is not enough to tackle the challenges of the 21st century. So this pandemic is just, the initial challenge that describes or point to future challenges. And in order to address those challenges, we need those institutions that will be able not only to understand how entangled we are, but to devise the procedures with which we will bring that entanglement to avoid crises like pandemics, because the global institutions that we have devised in the 20th century de facto did not prevent a world pandemic. So we need those new institutions with, of course, new procedures, new authority to be able, first of all.
Do you think it will not be voluntarily from now on?
No.
It has to be in a different way?
Because entanglement is not based on voluntarism. It's based upon very harsh, very clear actions that if you are not working with those kind of actions, then you are being punished. Punishment is very important in the entanglement paradigm. And globalization did not provide or develop different kinds of punishments to whoever is not listening to humanity's wisdom, the global wisdom. Take, for example, the way we are acting on our environment. So, nations are taking it as if they want to, they can. If they don't want to take actions, they don't have to take actions. And world politics and world institutions did not have any let's say any way to force nations to take actions. But we need those institutions, and it has to be, of course, politically correct. It doesn't have to be with unusual action like wars, even though maybe one of the actions we need to take is very harsh actions against nations that are not understanding, that do not accept that entanglement idea.
The problem is history, and I'm also telling you as a judge, the researcher says that punishment doesn't really help at the end of the day.
So, yeah, but a pandemic by itself is a very cruel punishment. People understand now that nobody needs to punish you, but you are being punished by environment, by biology, etc., etc.
Or by God, as you believe.
Oh my God, that's another issue. Yeah.
Okay, so what you see is not what we are talking about. It means that you see another type of leadership which will be more hierarchic, more harsh, more punishing, let's say, more,
No. Let me clarify myself. It's not hierarchy. The best way to bring that paradigm into institutions is only new kind of idea sharing, new kind of collaboration. The idea of collaboration itself needs to take a very different stage, a very different level, because people understood collaboration as a voluntarily thing for their sake, not for the sake of humanity, but for their sake. So collaboration needs to go to another level, understanding that only through collaboration we are able.
Like we say in Hebrew, אם לא תבינו שאתם תלויים זה בזה, תהיו תלויים זה ליד זה.
Very good. That's a good one. Now translate it into English. Let's see if you can.
If you not understand that you are dependent on each other, that your life is depending on each other, then at the end of the day will be hang one near to the other or close to the other. It's in Hebrew, the word talui means depend on one hand and also hang on the other hand. So this is kind of proverb.
Exactly. So this is the kind of collaborations that we need to develop are different than the globalization collaboration. And this is something that we are still trying to understand how to do it. But in the next decades, we will do it in different ways, and we need those leaders that will lead this idea. It's like what happened exactly a century ago. After World War I, people understood that we need to do something in order to avoid pandemics. And one of the ideas that was developed immediately after World War I was what we call the public health services. So that was a very interesting idea that came out from that crisis, and leaders took it as something that needs to be implemented at the beginning in very specific nations, and then all over the world. It took a century to develop, and still there are a lot of holes in that paradigm, or in that kind of institutes. There are a lot of problems. There are still nations that are debating the exact let's say procedure or institute in different nations. But now we need to go further and develop new institutes, new ideas of health services worldwide, so that we will be able to avoid future pandemics. And let be clear, pandemics will constantly occur again and again and again and again in human history. This is part of the biological evolution system. Those pandemics are very crucial in the evolution of humanity, and not just of humanity. So we will see those pandemics occurring again and again, but we need those institutes that will take care of those kind of crises in the future better than the way they are being taking care of this pandemic.
Great. If I will ask you if you can say something about the characteristics of this kind of leadership. Can you imagine or tell us how do you see it? You once said that the next era of leadership will be a feminine leadership. Do you think it's still going to be a feminine leadership, or maybe, I don't know?
Yeah, well, the feminine leadership, one of its very clear characteristic is that it has a lot of empathy, much more than the masculine. Yeah, the masculine leadership. Now, that empathy is what might bring together a lot of people to collaborate in different ways, not for their sake, but for the sake of a cause. Because globalization was bringing into the front the idea that it's only for your interest to be part of other groups. But entanglement, it's not for your interest, it's for the interest of the cause, of the interest of humanity. You are just a very small part of something much, much bigger. The only way to, as far as I understand, to bring that idea into fruition is through empathy. And the feminine leadership can, through empathy, explain or bring the idea of entanglement, I believe, a little bit better than the masculine kind of leadership. Now, you don't have to be a man or a female to be with a feminine kind of leadership. It's not a feministic kind of leadership, but it's a mindset that needs to develop. The masculine mindset was very dominant in the globalization era of the 20th century. And now we need a different kind of mindset, and probably the feminine one will be able to do it better, a little bit better than the masculine one.
So maybe we'll go again to the punishment, and we'll say that when there is an empathy, maybe we have to find a different way of, not punishment, but a different way to really explanation, more containing one, more yin one, what we say. So maybe this will be the kind of the leadership that the world needs.
Yeah, well, punishment is a harsh word. It has a lot of connotations, but punishment can be also avoiding or not exactly being with empathy, because if you don't give empathy, it's also a kind of punishment. We know that we are much more, we need much more empathy from our mothers than from our fathers. So if there's no empathy from our mothers, it's much harsher than the opposite. Exactly.
So I will. What comes to my mind now is to go back to your story, because today I was, trying to define what to say when I'm introducing you, and it reminds me the story of you being in the war in Lebanon. It was in Lebanon or in Syria, I don't remember.
Lebanon, yeah.
Lebanon. You felt a lot of casualties, your friends were dying, and this, what you say, brought you to ask all the questions about the future. If we are doomed to be in a survival mode, as say Jewish people or Israeli people, etc., etc. What I said once, that we have to find out how to go out of the survival mode into the future creation mode. So do you think, let's say from the awareness point of view, that we have to go there, otherwise we will stay in the survival mode and more people will die?
Well, there are a lot of stages in the awareness of each one of us. The first one is, of course, the survival mode, but that's only the first one. And you have to go through that phase. If you are not going through that phase, you will not be able to really reach higher levels of consciousness. The highest level of consciousness, of course, is what we call love. Okay, that's giving without receiving anything. Okay, humanity has a lot to go through until it will really reach that level of consciousness. But without being or experiencing that mode of existence, you will not be able to jump to the next level. Now, the next level is, of course, collaboration. And the other level is the giving, totally giving, without thinking about what you gain from it. Okay, so these are stages, and humanity is in a very long journey in history. We are just in the 21st century. It's only the beginning of this species. By all means, people think we are the most advanced species in this universe. We are, by all means, we are just at the very early stages of Are you still with me?
Yes, we hear you.
We are at the very early stages of evolution. Okay, the Homo sapiens is just a few, thousand years from maybe 60,000 to 120,000 years ago. But we are not Homo sapiens. We are Homo sapiens sapiens. We are a branch of Homo sapiens. And we are here just 10,000 years, something like that, which is nothing. We are just at the very beginning of our journey in evolution. And we will go step by step to evolve to an amazing species the more we go in the future. And we are at the stage in which we need to just go another level from, if you wish, from, as I said, from globalization to entanglement. But entanglement itself is just another stage. It will never end. and that's why it makes us as a species with the consciousness something really unusual, because we are able to speak about what we are going through, and devise ways to accomplish whatever we think is best for us. And the most important thing, we are the only species probably that can devise a paradigm that will to educate our leaders in the future. And this is really something unusual, because most of the animals in this universe, on this earth at least, are not devising a paradigm of leadership. Leaders are taking their leadership and that's it. And most of the time they are very cruel in that process of taking leadership. Here, we are probably the only species that can devise a paradigm of leadership and educate for leadership in a way that is good.
On the other end, what we see now, it's as well cruelty. Sometimes it has a very nice words behind it.
Yeah, of course. We are still cruel. Leaders are still cruel.
Yes. So this is one thing. Before we end, we have another 5 minutes. I cannot stop myself from asking you about the way you see. I don't want as a prophet, but to say as a prophet, but the way you see the COVID-19. And at the beginning, you said something about how many people are going to die from the COVID-19. Are you still think that it will be really a disaster upon this planet, or you see it indifferently?
Well, you see, this is the first time that humanity is experiencing a pandemic with new tools, technologies, sciences, and with those tools we are trying to
social media,
everything. Okay, this is the first time we will be able to stop a pandemic with knowledge. Up to now in history, the only way to stop a pandemic was through the herd vaccination. Okay,
immunization.
So in order to, if we will not do anything, okay, and still people are still thinking that we don't have to do anything, okay, but if we will not do anything, that means we will rely on the herd vaccination, which means that there will be about 1% of whoever will catch this virus that will die. Now, 1% from about 6 billion people, okay, because for herd vaccination you need something like 60 to 70% of the people to catch the virus. So 1% of 6 billion people out of 8 billion people now means what? It means exactly 100 million people. And God forbid, if in different places it will be worse than that, it can be much more than that. Because we are in the 21st century and we have new tools, we will be able to manage this pandemic differently than the way humanity has managed pandemics in the past. But if we will not take real action based on science and on technologies, that means that we will go through 5 to 10 years. And God forbid, in those 5 to 10 years, bit by bit, we will reach without being aware of it or willing to, we will reach the herd vaccination. And in a matter of a decade, we might lose 50 million people and 100 million people. So that's the reason why we need to take very harsh actions in order not to reach that stage. And this is actually the debate now worldwide. A lot of people are saying, well, it's just, something that is being pushed by social media. There is no truth in it. Okay, it's only, it's only something that will pass to most of us. But 1% of those people that will catch the virus, that will die, if we will not do anything, that's horrible. And that's why at the beginning I said we need to be very careful. We need to take action based on science, on 21st century science and technologies. Otherwise, most of the pandemics in history took years. Okay, there were pandemics that repeated themselves every decade, and for example, the black plague. The Black Plague used to repeat itself every decade in different places, and in a matter of 160 years, something like that, millions of people, just in Europe, about 30 to 50% of Europe diminished in a matter of 15 years. So we need to take action based on the knowledge we have in the 21st century, and we need not to rely on the herd vaccination.
Okay, I am stopping myself from saying something. Maybe I agree with you on most of the parts, but Shakespeare said in Julius Caesar, the coward dies many times before his death. And the problem by the social media that we are also, let's say, we are not immune against hysteria and anxiety and fear, and this has its own price on society. So the question is how to prevent people from dying on one hand, but also how to prevent people from being hysteric and dying out of suicide, and because of the financial situation and the economic situation.
Well, that's another issue. This is the first time in history that a pandemic is really global. Most of the time it was, in different places worldwide. Not in a matter of a couple months, it was spread all across the globe. And we do not have, a book that will explain exactly what you do. But if we will not base our decision-making on the most advanced knowledge, okay? And based on the let's say the collective wisdom of our scientists, there will be always people in the side that will have different ideas, but we need to base our decision making on the collective wisdom, even though it might turn to be false. Okay, that it doesn't say that the collective wisdom is always the right way to go. But this is what we have.
We make mistakes when we see something which is unknown, and we go forward. We may make mistakes.
We'll do a lot of mistakes, but this is the only way to go. Otherwise, yes, we might find ourselves doing just mistakes, and at the end, only the herd vaccination will take its effect. But it will take its effect. It will take us another 10 years to come out of this crisis. In the matter of a decade, a lot of people will die. A lot. It might be millions of people.
Okay, Professor Psiig, now you have another last minute to say some optimistic words, so we can finish this conversation.
You know me, I'm always optimistic. I'm realistic, but I'm optimistic. I know that within each crisis lies amazing things that we need to discover. And Churchill already said that you need to be dumb to not to take a crisis as a springboard to new level of development.
Thank you so much, my good friend.
Thank you, Shlomo.
I'm looking forward to see you in our SGLA program that begins this Thursday, and I still invite many people to come. We have in the Zoom, there is a great thing. You have more room in the Zoom than you have in the classes. So we have many people already, many students already registered, but we have still open spaces. So if you come, we'll be very happy to host you here. And Professor Psiג will give a whole lecture on the new era of leadership. And thank you so much, and see you soon, my good friend.
See you.
Bye-bye.